Hey everybody, I wasn't going to do another sports rant for a little while anyway, but I couldn't not react to the news of John Farrell getting fired, which of course is news that I think a lot of Red Sox fans wanted to hear. I was kind of a little indifferent to it, but I still got to mention it, still got to bring it up. And John Farrell obviously had a very up and down tenure with the Red Sox. It's been 5 years. It doesn't even feel like it's been that long, but he had 5 seasons with the Red Sox, so it's not like it was a small sample size. And, he won the World Series his first year, and it looked like it was the start of great things to come. I remember after they won the World Series, they were pretty much bringing the same team back the next year, and I was excited, and I think a lot of us were excited to see what they could do with another full season together, and of course it didn't work out. And not only that, but they kind of blew that team up at the end of the trade deadline, and really haven't been the same since, although they did get better the last couple of years. But the Red Sox are a screwy team, and that's why it's hard for me to really believe the manager is going to do that much of a difference, but we'll have to see. You look at the last 6 years for the Red Sox, they've had, a few disastrous seasons, they've had 2 decent seasons, and they had the World Series in there. With generally the same group of players. I mean, they've changed some players, but, you've had Pedroia the whole time, you had Ortiz a lot of that time. You had the same pitchers for part of it, Lester, and then going over to Porcello and some of the newer guys, and Hanley Ramirez the past couple of years. So, there hasn't been that much turnover on the team for there to be these drastically different results. But, that's baseball. And that's kind of, every organization treats, losing differently. Some teams have a bad year and they just kind of keep going. The Red Sox make the playoffs 2 years in a row and they fire their manager. I guess it's what the expectations are. And of course the expectations in Boston, in New York, and a few other places are that you win the World Series or at least make it interesting. And Red Sox haven't made it interesting the past couple of years, even though they've been in it, and they won the division last year, and they won the division this year. And I don't know if I can pin it all on Farrell, but I do feel like there's been kind of a lack of urgency among this team, except at times here and there. I thought it was disappointing. Like, it was good, but it was disappointing the way they lost to the Astros, just the way games 3 and 4, they played with so much more heart and intensity than the first 2 games, and it was like, I don't know, it was like they were just going through the motions. I noticed, and I've noticed this even with Terry Francona, but especially with John Farrell, that the Red Sox usually will start slow out of the gate, and then they'll finish badly. Like, even on their good seasons, their bad seasons, whatever, 2013 being the big exception, and that's really the outlier. I think a lot of that had to do with kind of the bad taste of 2012. Nobody liked Bobby Valentine, even though I didn't think he was that bad of a manager, but none of the players liked him. A lot of people were glad to be rid of him. You had some new players coming in that hadn't really dealt with the Red Sox before, like Mike Napoli and Shane Victorino, so that they were new influences on the team. And then the players who had been there were just so eager to play for John Farrell because they were glad he wasn't Bobby Valentine. So there was kind of this coming together of everybody because people weren't expecting them to contend. And it was almost like they kind of showed everybody by going on this run and winning the World Series in 2013. And since then, I just haven't seen that same intensity. It's like they just show up to camp, go through the motions, start the season, lose a few games, go, oh, that's all right, we got it. And then, in the case of 2014, they never recovered. They were just a lousy team from beginning to end, which was really perplexing because they still had that great pitching of Lester, Lackey, and Jake Peavy. But I guess even though they pitched fine, they had some great outings that year, the offense just didn't have it. You had Jackie Bradley struggling his first year, Xander Bogaerts struggling, and a good part of your lineup just wasn't getting it done other than maybe Ortiz and Pedroia. So that's why that team stunk. And then 2015, they got rid of all their pitching, and they wanted Clay Buchholz and Rick Porcello to be the answer. And questionable decisions, but again, does that really relate to John Farrell? I think some of it does. I think the attitude of the team definitely does. There just seems to be a lack of accountability and a lack of heart, especially at the beginnings and ends of seasons, In 2016, I thought could have been a great team. They were a great team to watch, actually. They scored a ton of runs. You had Mookie Betts in the middle of that order, MVP candidate. You had Xander Bogaerts doing well. David Ortiz, of course, in his last season. There was a lot to get excited about in the 2016 team, and they really missed an opportunity. They played awful against the Indians in that playoff series, so it's really hard to say what, the last week of the season in 2016 really frustrated me because they clinched the division on a loss to the Yankees, and then they lost like 4 of their last 5. It wasn't even close. It was like they just they were like, yeah, we won the division. All right, we're done. And then the playoffs came, and to nobody's surprise, they lost again. You can't just coast into the playoffs and expect you're just going to turn it on. especially with David Price getting bombed in the playoffs, which I guess is nothing new, although he was actually decent this year. And that's the weird thing. You know, one year a player is great, and the next year a player is not great. I don't know if that's the manager's fault. I don't know if it's the player's fault. It's weird. Rick Porcello wins the Cy Young one year. This year he stinks. Next year he could win it again. I don't know. And Chris Sale, you know, I think Chris Sale's close to a sure thing. Well, it was such a short sample size in the playoffs, and that's kind of the frustrating part, is that I can't really sit here and say, you know, this player's great, that player's not great. You know, it was like 4 games, literally 4 games, 7 playoff games in the last 2 years for me to evaluate, you know, baseball players who play hundreds of games through their career, and to just go like, oh yeah, that was a bad season or whatever because they lost, you know, 6 out of 7 playoff games in the last 2 years. I don't know, and I'm not saying it's not John Farrell's fault. I know a lot of people think that if he had won the series against the Astros, maybe he would have kept his job. But, I mean, what would have made him that much better if the team had rallied? I mean, the manager's the manager. And I think moving forward now, my question is, who replaces Farrell? I know they're not going to talk about candidates just yet. They wasted no time in firing him. I mean, the season just ended a couple days ago for the Red Sox. And they didn't waste any time making the announcement that he is out. I think a lot of that was fans just getting impatient and frustrated with the way things were going, despite the 2 division wins. But, again, who replaces him? That's an honest question. I've been hearing Jason Varitek's name thrown around. I mean, that's a nice name to say, but I don't think he's necessarily a manager material, at least not yet. I don't know if he wants to be, even. I know people know him. He was the captain of the Red Sox, although I don't know how much he did as the captain, but he was the captain of the team for a while, so he knows, you know, he knows the organization, he knows the pitching, all that. Good to see, I guess. Brad Ausmus recently fired from the Tigers. People have mentioned him. I've heard Alex Cora's name brought up, another former player. So, again, I don't know. Maybe you go to, like, a former manager, like a Gardenhire from the Twins or somebody else. I mean, the managers that I'd want are already employed with other teams. I mean, even as recently as Torey Lovello, the bench coach of the Red Sox for a while, he was actually worked better with the players than Farrell did. They played pretty decently in 2015 with him as the interim manager. And, of course, Lovello's with the Astros now. And a lot of former Red Sox bench coaches are coaching somewhere else now. Again, even like Bruce Bochy, he's obviously not going anywhere. So there are managers that I like personally, but I don't see them coming to the Red Sox just because they're already under contract or, I don't know. So it could be a surprise. For some reason, I think Alex Cora is going to end up being the manager. I don't know why. I just have that feeling that Varitek's not going to want to do it, and there's going to be a few other like veteran managers they'll interview, but they'll decide to go the younger route and go with like an Alex Cora. Because, I mean, Dave Roberts has had success as a first-time manager with L.A., and part of that has to do with the great players he's been given. But I feel like this Red Sox team has the kind of talent that you could have a manager who just kind of stays out of the way and, you know, regulates the clubhouse when they need to, but, you know, they're not, you know, as long as they make good in-game decisions, the team could still succeed. And I feel like, you know, even a guy like Alex Cora or someone who doesn't have much experience could win with this team, at least off the bat. And for whatever reason, whether it's this group or the previous group of Red Sox players, after a while they just seem to tune out the manager no matter what. So even Terry Francona was successful for many years with the Red Sox, and they just tuned him out. So, I mean, I don't think it's a manager's fault, but I think that a different face obviously is going to have success here, and could be Alex Cora, could be a number of people. So I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on who you think the next Red Sox manager should be. If you miss Farrell, I personally don't. I mean, I didn't love him, I didn't hate him. Usually I'm more passionate about this kind of thing. Usually I'd be saying, yeah, they fired him, or oh no, they fired him, but I'm really just kind of about it. Just, you know, hard to defend him, but also hard to say, you know, after making the playoffs 2 years in a row that he didn't deserve at least another chance. But that's Boston for you, and that's, you know, one of those big market teams where success is everything. So, again, moving forward, who should the Red Sox hire, and should they have fired their current manager? Let me know.